Hi everyone, we're back for another week of remote learning, and we're going to be focusing for this video on Module 11, Lesson 7. We're going to be using comparisons to order fractions, so I'll need you to have that packet of paperwork in front of you so that way you can follow along with what I'm doing. I'm going to make sure that I'll try to go a little bit slower. I think a couple of you sent me messages and said that you needed that I was rushing, so I will try to go a little bit slower, so that way I'm not going too fast. And so we will begin this together. We'll be doing this lesson, and then we'll actually be starting the new module for the next video, so that way we can keep right on and moving and keep moving and grooving. Okay, so I'm going to get my camera ready and we will begin. Okay, so remember we were comparing fractions, right? We were doing we were finding common denominators, or we were finding common numerators, so that way we could compare our fractions. And now we're going to use that skill that we learned, and it will help us order our fractions. And when we order the fractions, it means that we're going to be putting them in order from either least to greatest, or we'll be putting them in order from greatest to least. So it's really important to pay attention to which one of these is the question is asking you to do, because this happens many times. Kids will think it said one and it really said the other. So really be focusing to paying attention. What do they want you to do? Do they want you to put the smallest fraction to the biggest fraction? Or do they want you to put the biggest fraction to the smallest fraction? Okay, so that's something to kind of keep in the forefront of your mind while we're doing this, so that way you're noticing which direction we should be focusing on putting our fractions in order from. And we're actually, this first one, we're going to be using the benchmark 1/2 to help us with our ordering of our fractions. Okay, so we have Elizabeth, and her soccer team is designing a new team flag. Their team colors are green and yellow. They are considering 3 same-sized designs. Which design has the least green fabric? Which has the most? So we're looking for the flag that's going to have the least green fabric, and which one has the most green fabric. And we can see over here in this rectangle, it lists how much of the design is covered in green fabric. So design 1 has 3/5 green fabric, design 2 has 1/8, and design 3 has 9/10. Now what they want us to do is to compare the fractions and order them from least to greatest. So first we're going to compare each fraction to the benchmark 1/2. So what I'm thinking of doing is I'm going to draw myself a number line. And on my number line, I'm going to begin with 0, and I'm going to end with 1 whole. Because I know I'm looking at all these fractions, none of them are bigger than 1 whole, right? As long as the top number is not bigger than the bottom number, the numerator is not bigger than the denominator, then it's not over 1 whole. So we know it's going to be all of these fractions fall in between 0 and 1. And then right here in the middle, I'm going to write 1/2. Now I'm going to think about each fraction, and I'm going to think about where it would fall on my number line. So when I first start with my 3/5, I'm thinking about 3/5. I'm thinking about the number 5. If I were to break the number 5 in half, if my number line were all in fifths, right? Right in the middle would be 2 1/2, right? We would have 2 1/2 in the middle, and then 5 down here, 0, 2 1/2, and 5. Or, I'm sorry, that was not what I meant to say. I apologize. Rewind. We're going to go backwards. Sorry about that. Right in the middle would be like half of 5, right? So 3 is bigger than half of 5, right? If we were just to have 5s, it would be 2 1/2. Sorry about that. I didn't mean that this would be I didn't mean to confuse you on that one. So I know that my 3/5 is going to be bigger than 1/2. So here's where my 3/5 would be. So the symbol I'm going to use here is a greater than symbol. Now I want to compare my 1/8 to 1/2. Now 1/8 is not very much, right? If I were to have, what would be, if this were in eighths, what would be half? It would be 4/8 would be half, right? So 1/8 would be way down here. So that means that 1/8 is less than 1/2. And then I look at my 9/10. If this was broken up into tenths, 9/10 is almost 1/2. If this was in tenths, my 1/2 would be 5/10, right? My equivalent fraction. So 9/10 is way up here. And that would be where 9/10 would fall. So that means that 9/10 is greater than 1/2. So which two fractions are both greater than 1/2? Well, we could see that 3/5, right, and 9/10 are both greater than 1/2. So by process of elimination, the only one that is less than 1/2 is 1/8. So that would mean that 1/8 is the least fraction, which would be design 2, right? Design 2 has the least amount of green fabric. So now we want to write an equivalent fraction to compare the two fractions that are greater than 1/2. So we have 3/5 and we have 9/10. And we want to write an equivalent fraction to compare those two fractions. So when I look at my denominator, I notice that my 5 is a multiple, or my 10 is a multiple of 5. So I can do something to my 3/5 to find an equivalent fraction. So I'm going to take my 3/5. I want to turn my fifths into tenths. In order to turn my fifths into tenths, I'm going to have to multiply it by 2/2. So 3 times 2 is 6. 5 times 2 is 10. So that means that 6/10 is equivalent to 3/5. And if I compare 6/10 with 9/10, 6/10 is less than 9/10 because I found my equivalent fraction, so that way I could tell. Now, yes, I know we did our number line up here, and we could have done all of that without doing this step, but this is really what proves it to be true, right? This really proves it by finding that equivalent fraction. So now we can see the order our fractions should be. So we're going to write the original fractions, not our equivalent fraction, the original fractions. 3/5, 1/8, and 9/10. Oops, sorry. 3/5, 1/8, and 9/10. We're going to write them in order from, there's our key, right? We need to pay attention, least to greatest. So we already remember our least fraction was 1/8. The middle fraction will be the equivalent to 6/10, which was 3/5. And the greatest fraction is 9/10. So we have 1/8, 3/5, and 9/10. And then we're going to identify the flag design that has the least green fabric. So our least is 1/8, which is which design? Design 2. And the most, with the most green fabric, was 9/10, which is design 3. So our least was design 2, our most was design 3. Okay? All right, next page. At the end of the soccer team party, parts of 3 medium pizzas are left. There is a 3/4 of a cheese pizza, 1/2 of a pepperoni pizza, and 5/6 of a veggie pizza. Elizabeth wants to compare the amounts of pizzas left. Use a common denominator to compare the fractions. So our cheese is 3/4. Our pepperoni is 1/2. And our veggie is 5/6. I like to go back in my problem and kind of circle what is the information I need, so that way it helps me when I go to do the actual work. Now, we've been comparing fractions. We've been comparing 2, and we've been using common denominators, right? And we've been using multiples to find our denominators. So if I look, I've got a 2 as a denominator, a 4, and a 6. So I'm going to first list multiples of the 3 denominators. So I'm going to list the first 5. We'll just start with that. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10, right? This just means the first, when you are counting by 2s, right? What are the first 5 that you would count? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, right? When we're counting by 2s, are multiples, the numbers multiplied by 2. Now the first 5 multiples of 4. We're going to go 4, 8, 12, 16, and 20. Do we see anything in common yet? We see a 4 in common, right? But that's, oh no, and we have an 8 in common. Sorry, a 4 and an 8 in common. All right, let's do our 6s. So we've got 6, 12, 18, 24, 30. So I see I've got a 6 in common with my 2 and my 6, but I don't have that in common with my 4. I have 12 in common with my 4 and my 6. I haven't gone far enough with my 2, I think. I think I need to go a little further with my 2. What if I just go one more? And then I can see I have a 12, a 12, and a 12. So that would be my lowest common multiple, my least common multiple between these 3 numbers, the 2, the 4, and the 6. So we're going to use this common multiple, the 12, to put all of our fractions in 12ths. So what would we multiply 3/4 by? And remember, we want 12ths as our denominator. So actually, I'm just going to put that already here. So we know that's what our goal is. Our goal is to get a fraction with a 12th as a denominator. So what do I multiply 4 by to get 12? Well, I multiply 3 times 4 to get 12. And if I'm multiplying 3 times my denominator, I have to multiply 3 times my numerator. Because remember, 3/3 is the same as 1 whole. Anytime we multiply anything times 1, we're going to get itself. And when we talk about fractions, that tells us that we're getting an equivalent fraction. So 3 times 3 equals 9. What number will we multiply by 2 to equal 12? Well, that would be 6. So if I'm multiplying 6 times 2 to equal 12, I have to multiply 6 times 1, and that equals 6. And then I have what times 6 equals 12? Well, that would be a 2. So if 2 times 6 equals 12, then 2 times 5 equals 10. So I can see I've got 9/12, 6/12, and 10/12. So we're going to use the equivalent fractions to write the original fractions in order from least to greatest. So when I look at my equivalent fractions, I can see that which one is the smallest, which is the least fraction. Well, that would be 6/12, right? So the original fraction, that's the equivalent to 6/12, is 1/2. So that's my least. Remember, we're doing least to greatest. So now I'm down to my 9/12 and my 10/12. Well, 9 is smaller than 10, so that would mean 3/4 goes next. And then my greatest fraction must be 5/6. So then we need to write our pizzas in order from the least amount to the left to the greatest amount left. So which pizza was 1/2? The pizza that was 1/2 was pepperoni. The pizza that was 3/4 was cheese. And then the greatest amount that was left was our veggie. So see how we were able to use a common denominator to help us organize our fractions in order from least to greatest. So then it made it easy for us to tell it was pepperoni had the least amount left, cheese, and then veggie had the most amount left. Okay? Alrighty, so now we're going to come down to check for understanding. I'm going to zoom this in a little bit more for you. And we've got burritos this time. Oh my goodness, this is making me hungry, all this food talk. All right, Roger, Haley, and Ji-Ho made the same sized burritos. Roger eats 4/6 of his burrito. Haley eats 6/8 of hers, and Ji-Ho eats 4/10 of his. Who eats the least and greatest amount of burrito? And then it wants us to explain. When it says to explain, I just want to clarify this a little bit. You don't have to write this in sentences as much as just as long as you show your work. Showing your work is basically explaining how you got that answer, okay? So I don't want you to stress yourselves out to think that you have to be writing all these long, complete sentences, okay? If you show the work and then you write your answer, you'll be good to go. So Roger eats 4/6. Haley eats 6/8. Ji-Ho eats 4/10. And we want to know who eats the least and who eats the greatest. So we have 4/6. We have 6/8. I'm going to separate them just a little bit. And we have 4/10 because we know we're going to have to find some common denominators. So let's start listing our factors so we can see what we've got in common. And I know if I have a 10, I'm going to have a number that the denominator has a 0 in the ones place. So that's going to be the trick, okay? So I've got 6, 12, 18, 24, 30. I don't think that's going to get me to anything with 8. Actually, that might not work with 10s. You know what we'll do with this one? Sorry, I'm rethinking my plan. I'm redoing it. I'm going to use the half. I think if we use the half, it will make a lot more sense. Okay? So I'm going to make a number line. I apologize for switching gears, but I think finding a common denominator will be a lot more difficult than using the half strategy. Okay? So let's look at our first fraction, our 4/6. When I think about sixths, and if this whole thing was broken up into sixths, right in the middle would be 3/6, right? So 4/6 is going to be a little more than my 1/2, right? Because 1/2 would be 3/6. If I look at my 6/8, now right in the middle with eighths, if this whole thing was broken up into eighths, would be 4/8. But I've got 6/8. So 6/8 is going to be up here somewhere. And then if this whole thing was broken up into tenths, 5/10 would be in the half, and this is 4/10, so it's got to be a little less than 1/2. So right now I found my lowest, right? I found my least. These two, I'm not as confident in which one is bigger, but I am confident in which one is the least. So I'm going to say that my 4/10 is the least, so that would be Ji-Ho. So right now I know that Ji-Ho eats, sorry about that, the least. And then our greatest, we've got a 4, 6, and a 6, 8. So here we could find a common denominator for these two. I can multiply, I know that 24 is a common denominator, is a common denominator for 6 and for 8. So 6 times 4 equals 24, so I have to multiply the top number by 4. 4 times 4 is 16. 8 times 3 equals 24. 6 times 3 equals 18. Look how close those two are. They're only 2 24ths away from each other. So that means our greatest is 6/8. Who eats 6/8 of theirs? Haley. So Haley eats the greatest. Okay, and that's all they wanted. They wanted who eats the least and who eats the greatest. Our explanation I can show with my number line, and I can show by finding a couple with common denominators, with equivalent fractions. All right, so we're on the on your own section. And remember, if you want to do this on your own, you are welcome to pause the video and do it and then come back. If you want to stay right with me, that is awesome as well. And you can stay right with me and we'll do this together. Okay? Aaron's soccer team is voting on a new team flag. They are voting on 3 designs. Each flag is the same size. Design 1 is 2/3 blue. Design 2 is 1/6 blue. Design 3 is 3/8 blue. Compare the amount of blue in each design. Write the flag designs in order from least amount of blue to greatest amount of blue. So we want to write these in order from least to greatest. So we've got design number 1 is 2/3 blue. Design number 2 is 1/6 blue. And the design number 3 is 3/8 blue. So when I look at these denominators, could I find a common denominator for these fractions? I could for these, right? I could use the common denominator 24 for all of these. Because if I were to list these out, right, I would have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, gotta squeeze it in here, 24. And then if I were to count by 6, 12, 18, 24, there's our 24, and then 8, 16, 24, right? So 24 definitely is my target. So what will I multiply 2/3 by to get 24 as my denominator? I would multiply it by 8, right? And if I were to count those, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that would tell me, right? But I know that 8 times 3 is 24. So that means 2 times 8 is 16. So now we've got, I'm just going to draw a line in between the 1/6. We're going to multiply 1/6 by what to get 24? We're going to multiply it by 4 over 4. 6 times 4 is 24. 1 times 4 is 4. And now we've got our eighths. What times 8 equals 24? That would be 3. So 3 times 3 is 9. So now I have 16 24ths, 4 24ths, 9 24ths. So we remember we're putting the flag designs in order from least amount to greatest amount. So our least amount would be the 4 24ths, which would be 1/6. Then the one in the middle would be 9 24ths, which is 3/8. And the largest amount of blue would be 16 24ths, which is 2/3. So that means that we would go from design 2, then we need design 3, then design 1. So the flag designs in order from least to greatest would be design 2, design 3, design 1. Okay, number 3. Compare each, oops, sorry, I'll leave that just in case you, sorry. Do you need a little bit time to write that in? You can also pause the video, write this stuff in, and then restart the video so that way you're not having to like keep up with me if I'm going too fast. You can go ahead and pause the video right now, write all that down, and then restart it. All right, number 3, compare each fraction to the benchmark 1/2. Then write the 3 fractions in order from least to greatest. So again, we're going from least to greatest. So here's my number line. So if I think about 7/8 compared to 1/2, if this was all broken up into eighths, right in the middle would be 4/8, and look, it's 7/8, so it's almost 1 whole. So that's definitely greater than 1/2. 3/6 compared to 1/2. Well, if this is broken up into sixths, right in the middle is 3/6. So 3/6 is equal to 1/2. And then 4/10, if this is broken up into tenths, right in the middle would be 5/10. So that means that 4/10 is less than 1/2. So if we're writing these in order from least to greatest, we would start with 4/10. Then we would have 3/6. And then our greatest would be 7/8. Nice job. All right, now the next one. Write the fractions in order from least to greatest. So we're still with least to greatest. Now I've got 4/3, 5/6, 9/10. One thing I'm noticing right off the bat is this 4/6 stands out to me, or 4/3, sorry. The reason why the 4/3 stands out to me is because the numerator is bigger than the denominator, and that's not the case for the other two. So that's sending off some fireworks in my head. It's like ding, 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 all these bells and whistles. That one's got to be the greatest because this one is more than 1 whole. So already, by process of elimination, we've got that one. Now these two are trickier because they are both very close to 1 whole. So we're going to need to find something that has a common denominator. So if I have 5/6 and I have 9/10, I need to think of something I can multiply them by so I get a common denominator. Now one thing I know about sixths is if I multiply 6 times 5, I'm going to get 30. And what I know about tens is multiples of 10, right, are going to always end in a 0. So this has to be my denominator. So if 30 is my common denominator, I'm going to multiply 5/6 by 5/5, which is 25/30. And I'm going to multiply 9/10 by 3/3, which is 27/30. So look how super close these are. They're only 2/30 away from one another. So that means our least fraction is my 5/6. So that means the one in the middle must be 9/10. Now I want to write my fractions in order from greatest to least. So my biggest one has to be here, my smallest one here. So this is our first change in the order. Okay? So if I look at my fractions, I have 1/4, I have 3/8, and I have 2/10. So if I think about my 1/4, my 3/8, and my 2/10, is there anything that these denominators have in common? I'm thinking that 40. They have 40 in common, right? Because I could multiply 4 times 10 to get 40, 8 times 5 to get 40, and 10 times 4 to get 40. So I have 1/4 times 10/10, and that's going to give me 10/40. I have 3/8 times 5/5, and that's going to give me 15/40. And then I have 2/10 times 4/4, and that's going to give me 8/40. So which is my largest fraction? Well, my largest fraction would be 3/8. My fraction in the middle would be 1/4. And my greatest fraction would be 2/10. Now I know some kids would look at this and go, oh, well, the 1/4 must be the smallest. This is why we find out exact with our common denominators, because otherwise we would be incorrect, right? If you had just put them in order 3/8, 2/10, 1/4, you would be incorrect. 1/4 is actually bigger than 2/10. All right? So now we are going to write a numerator that's going to make this sentence true. So we're going to need to think about what is going to make this sentence true. So if I have 4/5 is bigger than this fraction, and this fraction is bigger than 1/2. So we have to have a fraction that's greater than 1/2. So if I think about my number 10 and a number that would be greater than 1/2, well, I know that with tenths, 5/10 is equivalent to 1/2, right? So it's going to have to be bigger than 5 because it has to be bigger than 1/2. But it's also got to be less than 4/5. So let's find a 4/5. Let's see what this would be with a 10 as our denominator. So if I multiply this by 2/2, I get 8/10. So it's got to be somewhere between 5/10 and 8/10. So what number could we have here? We could do a 6, or we could do a 7. We could do either one because, right, we would need a number in between 8/10 and 5/10. So that would be either 6/10 or 7/10. So you could either write 6 or 7. All right, now we have 1/4 is less than 5/12, which is less than something 6. Well, what I'm noticing about these fractions that we have in common are these two. We've got 12 and 6, right? And this is 4 and 12. So could we get these all to 12s? We could. We don't necessarily need to get this one to 12s because we already know it's less than this. So let's just focus on these two, okay? So I want to get my 6 to 12s. So I would have to multiply it by 2/2. I don't know what this is going to be yet. So let's just, we don't know. So we know it's got to be something 2/12, right? So, or not 2/2. We know that, we need to get bigger than 5. So what number could we multiply by 2 that would be bigger than 5? Well, if I multiply 2 times 2, I'm going to get 4. That's not bigger than 5. But if I multiply 3 times 2, I would get 6/12, which is bigger than 5/12. So I really could do any number 3 or larger. So if I put 3 here, that works. I could do 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? I could go any number 3 or larger. All right, and our last one. We're not sure, it's 8ths is less than 3/4, which is less than 7/8. So again, I don't really need to worry about my 7/8. I just need to know that whatever fraction I create is less than 3/4. And I have 4ths and 8ths. So I'm going to take my 3/4. I'm going to find an equivalent fraction with 8ths so I can see what numbers it needs to be less than. So I would need to multiply this by 2/2, which would give me 6/8. So this just needs to be anything less than, I'm sorry, I'm just covering this up because I don't want you to confuse yourself with the work that we did over here. So this right here just needs to be less than 6/8. So it can be any number less than 6. So 5, 4, 3, 2, or 1 would be less than 3/4. So see where finding those common denominators that we've been doing a lot lately is really going to be the biggest help to you when you are doing this, or using your 1/2, right? Those are going to be your two big, the most help for you. All right. We have Carrie, Jill, and Skylar. They record the distances they each swim to practice. Or swim at practice, not to practice. Oh my goodness, their streets would be flooded if they're swimming to practice. The table shows the distances they swam. Show the order that Carrie, Jill, and Skylar swam from least to greatest distance. Use fraction comparison strategies to justify your comparisons. So we're going to be going from least to greatest. And basically we're going to show our work, right, to justify our answer, to say this is why my answer is the way it is. So we can see that Carrie swims 12/8 kilometers, Jill swims 10/6 kilometers, and Skylar swims 12/10 kilometers. So we've got our 12/8, we've got our 10/6, and we've got our 12/10. Now I'm noticing with all of these fractions that they are improper fractions, right? The numerator is bigger than the denominator, so they are improper. So what I would like to do is I would like to change them to mixed numbers. I think if we change them to mixed numbers, it might help us see things a little more clearly. So to do that, I'm going to need to figure out, well, how many whole numbers do I have in this fraction? Well, if I take out an 8/8, which is my 1 whole, how many would I have left? I would have 4/8 left. So I would have 1 and 4/8 is my mixed number to this improper fraction. 10/6. If I take out my 6/6, which was my 1 whole, I would have 4/6 left. So this would be 1 and 4/6. And with my 12/10, if I take out a 10/10, which is my 1 whole, I would have 2/10 left. So 1 and 2/10. Now I'm thinking this is going to be a lot easier to compare. Because if I look at these fractions and I want to go least to greatest, I can see that 1 and 4/8. What could I change this to find an to help me with one of my strategies? One of my strategies was using the number line with the 0 to 1 and the 1/2 in the middle. 4/8 is the same as 1/2, right? So this is equivalent to 1/2. So this would be right in the middle. I'm just looking at my fraction part, okay? 4/6, if we've got half is 3/6, 4/6 is just a little bit bigger. So there's my 4/6. 2/10, oops, oh my goodness, I am so sorry. I did that before too. I apologize. You can't see my work and I'm just talking and you're like, what is going on? I apologize. So my 2/10, half of 10 is 5. So 2 is definitely less than 5, so that would be over here. Because all my whole numbers are the same, those all can kind of cancel each other out a little bit, and I can just focus on the fractions. And if I'm writing these from least to greatest, so that means 1 and 2/10 is the smallest, which is 12/10. So that means Skylar swims the least distance. Right in the middle would be our 1 and 4/8, so that's our 12/8, which is Carrie. And then the one that swam the furthest would be our 1 and 4/6, which is Jill. So we know that 12/10 is less than 12/8, which is less than 10/6, if we were to put them in that order. Okay, number 10. Sorry, this video is definitely very long. I should have broken it up into two, but we're almost done, so we're going to stick with it. If you needed to take a break, you can most certainly pause and then come back. Compare each fraction to the benchmark, then write the fractions in order from least to greatest. They really like that least to greatest. All right, 8/8 compared to 1 whole. Well, if our number on the top is the same as our number on the bottom, it's always 1 whole, so those are equal. 12/11 compared to 1 whole. 12/11, if the numerator is bigger than the denominator, then that means it's greater than 1 whole. So 12/11 would be greater. 10/12. 10 is less than 12, so that is less than 1 whole. So we're going to rate them from least to greatest. Our smallest fraction would be, it's the one that's less than 1 whole, so that would be 10/12. Next will come the one that's equal to 1 whole, which is 8/8. And then greater than 1 whole would be 12/11. So that would be the order for those fractions. Number 11. Write the fractions in order from least to greatest. So again, we're doing our smallest to our biggest. So we've got 1/4, we've got 3/6, and we've got 1/8. Now, already looking at these, what I know about my fractions, 3/6 is the same as 1/2, right? And then I've got 1/4 and 1/8. So all of these, remember when we compare and our numerator is the same, our denominator, the smaller the denominator, the bigger the pieces, okay? So our smallest denominator is 2, so that means there are bigger pieces here. So 3/6 would be our biggest. Our smallest is the one with the biggest number on the bottom because they all have the same numerator once I did a common or I did a equivalent fraction here. So 1/8 would be our smallest. So that means 1/4 is in the middle. Remember, the bigger the denominator when your numerators are the same, this only is when the numerators are the same, the bigger the denominator, the smaller the pieces. The smaller the denominator, the bigger the pieces. All right, write the fractions in order from greatest to least. This time we're going biggest to smallest. So I have 14/10, 8/5, and 7/8. So when I look at all of these fractions, I already have some, bells and whistles going off in my head. There's one fraction that's not like the others, and that fraction is 7/8. 7/8 is the only fraction that has a smaller number on top than on bottom. So that one has to be your smallest fraction. That has to be your least. So now I'm left with 14/10 and 8/5. So what I'm going to do is what I did up here with these improper fractions. First, I want to make a mixed number. So if I pull out my 10/10, then I have 4/10 left, right? So this will be 1 and 4/10. And my 8/5, if I pull out my 5/5, which is my 1 whole, I have 3/5 left. So now when I look at my fraction parts, my whole numbers are the same. So I'm just going to compare my fraction parts. 4/10. Half of 10 is 5. So this is less than 1/2. 3/5. Half of 5 is 2.5. 3 is bigger than that. So that means that 3/5 is greater than 1/2. So our biggest fraction has to be 8/5. And the one in the middle would be 14/10. See how I'm able to just, oops, that 5 is not very good. It looks more like a 6. Sorry about that. See how I can make my improper fractions a mixed number, and then I can just compare those fractions to help me figure out the order. And finally, Sasha says that the fractions 2/3, 3/6, 4/10 are in order from least to greatest because the numerators are in order from least to greatest. Is Sasha correct? Well, do we ever do it just because the numerators are in order from least to greatest? The only time we would do that is if the denominators were the same, right? And are these denominators the same? No, they're not. So let's look at our fractions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the number line. And I've got my 0, my 1 whole, and my 1/2. So if I look at 2/3, I can see that 2/3 is greater than 1/2. 3/6 is the same as 1/2. 4/10 is less than 1/2. So the correct order from least to greatest would be 4/10, 3/6, 2/3. The complete opposite of what she said, isn't it? So, is Sasha correct? No. And our explanation, this is the real order, and our explanation is our number line. So, I would like you to complete the black and white sheet or complete the independent worksheet that I sent home, stapled to the work. Kane, I sent home a different sheet that you could do, so that way it didn't have all as many word problems on it. So please go ahead and complete that sheet front and back and return the work to me at school by Friday, so that way I can check it over and grade it and see how you're doing. Remember, if you need any help, if you're having any difficulties, if you have any questions, please, please, please reach out to me. I am more than happy to schedule a Google Meet with you, so that way we can kind of go over things and hopefully I can clarify them for you. Okay? So I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you later. Bye.